Hi guys, this is Sai Kumar Kortiwada. In this video, we will learn about one of the feature which was introduced in Angular 15 only on the standalone components, that is nothing but directive composition. So there is something called as directive composition. We'll try to understand this directive composition in Angular 15, and let me quickly jump into Visual Studio for understanding this concept. Here, what is meant by a directive? A directive is nothing but whenever you have some set of element, and if you want to change the feature of it, we can customize that features of that particular element by using a particular directive. So before going to the directive composition, we'll try to understand a small minimal directives. And let me go into the new terminal, and here we will use a command to create our directive. And before creating our directive, what I want to do is I want to make this whole application as a standalone application. So for that sake, let me go into main.ts, and here let me comment this. Because we are using an app module here, I don't want to use any module. Now what I'll do is I'll use a bootstrap application with my app component. So that is my root component. Now our application will become a particular standalone application. So I'm trying to make this standalone application. I have explained you how to create a standalone application from the existing application in my previous video. I'll provide the link in the description for better understanding. Now let me go into app module and remove all the dependencies for this. So let me remove this app component and also app component from here and save this. So these are something related to the routing part. Now we don't want about this. Let me save this and go into app.component.ts and make our component as a standalone component. Let me use a standalone as true, and let me save this. So here why I am doing the standalone components is, first we will learn about the directives which we can use and which we can work with modules as well. But when you come to composite or directive composition, then this will not work out. It will work only for the standalone components. So that's why I am framing the standalone components and will try to create some set of normal directives. So for creating a directive, we have a command called as ng generate directive, and let me use a directive called as color directive with skipping of my test files. Let me skip this test files, and now it will create a directive and import it in our module. But we don't want to use this module because I want to make my directive also a standalone directive. So let me remove that dependencies in the app module, and let me go into our color directive, and inside this let me use a standalone. And instead of doing this, we can even create our directive by using an option. So let me remove this and let me show you one more property for that. So here let me create one more component, but this time I'll use a standalone option and hit enter. It will create a standalone component and it will not import anywhere. Now this directive, if you go into the directive here, it directly shows that standalone. Either you can keep the standalone property or else you can create the directive by using standalone option. Now this particular directive, if I want to use inside our component, then we have to import it in our import statement of this. So let me go into imports, and it takes an array. I'll use this color directive. Let me save this, and now we don't want main.ts, and let me use HTML. Inside the HTML, I'm just creating a paragraph, or let me use that paragraph already which we have, that is Angular 15 launched, and this one I'll rename it to Angular v15 custom, or let me use directive composition, and let me save this. And here inside the composition I'll use this app color. Let me copy this and paste here. Now this particular paragraph will have advanced features other than the paragraph. That advanced features can be defined in our directive. So what I want to do here is, let me use a private variable that is nothing but element ref, which is a service given by Angular, element ref, and that ref I can access inside this constructor. So let me show you that console.log of this dot element ref dot native element, and let me save this, go to the browser, and you can see here the paragraph whatever we wrote I am able to see in my directive. That means you are able to access that particular element in your directive. Let me zoom it a bit, and now let me go into the code and let's change the color of it. So whenever I want to change the color, let me hard code that color value by using its native element. this native element will have all the properties of your elements. For example, I can access a style property with a color, and that color I'm marking it as red. Let me save this, and now you can go here and you can see the whole text has been changed into red color. Even this directive I can use over the button. So for example, I have a button and I have something like submit, and save this. Now you can use this app color here. Let me save this and go here. Now you can see the color of the button label is in red color. That means you are able to apply this particular color directive anywhere, wherever we want. Now let me remove this submit. What I want to do is, I just don't want to restrict this directive with my red color. I want to pass some color from our component itself. For example, I'll use @input decorator, and for this input decorator, let me pass the color which is equal to string, and we don't have any default assignment for this. So whenever the color exists, then this has to be updated. For that sake, I'll not use this code inside the constructor. Instead, what I'll do is I'll use an implements with on changes. So I'll just use this on changes. Whenever this color changes, then I will update my element color by using this color property. So ng on changes will take the changes property, and if the changes occurs, then it comes here, and let me check that changes contains my color property, then my this dot element ref dot native element dot style dot color should be equivalent to my changes which is of color, and this color should have a current value. Whatever the value which I am passing, that will be assigned here. So now whatever the value we are passing from our HTML, that will be assigned here. So no need to use this, and remove this console. Let me save this, and now let me go into our HTML and pass our color. So what is the color here? I can pass a color with a property binding because that color is an input decorator, and now I can pass any of the color. Now I'm passing a property binding. That is the reason I'll pass a string inside this and pass it as red, or for our understanding, let me pass it as blue, and save this. Go here. Now it is in blue color, and whenever I use this paragraph one more time, and if I pass the color as red color, now it will be showing you in the red color. One is blue color and one is red color. So the same directive is acting in a different way with input decorators. So this is about our color directive. Now we are able to use a directive, and we are able to pass the data to that particular directive. So this is one scenario which we have covered. Now what I want to do is, I just want to create one more standalone directive. ng generate directive, and this time my directive is font style. So I want to make a font style with skip hyphen tests. I don't want to have a test files, and let me use a standalone property so that it creates as a standalone directive. So let me go into this directive, and now let me write our code. So what I want to do here is same thing like private. Now we are done with the app color as one of the directive, and now I want to create one more directive, ng generate directive, and I want to use a click event directive, and I don't want to have the test files, so skip tests hyphen standalone. I want to create a standalone directive, and let me go into this click event directive, and here what I want to do is, whenever the user clicks on a particular element, it has to emit some value. So for that sake, what I can do is I can create one host listener. So host listener is something like you can listen to the events on a particular element. So for now, what I'll use is I will use a click event, and when the user clicks, then we will be having one on call event, and we can even pass the events for this by using the second parameter, something like a $event, and that $event can be captured in the first parameter of this, and this event can be passed to my any of the output decorator. So let me create one output decorator here, @output decorator, and this output decorator will emit some changes. So for now, I'll use click emitter. This is my emitter, and this emitter would be something like event emitter, which will return some value, which is any value, and this will be equivalent to my new event emitter of, and this emitter should be coming from our Angular core, not from the streams. So make sure it should not come from the streams import, it should come from the Angular/core. Now my emitter is ready. When the user clicks on this particular element, then what I will do is I'll just pass that data into my parent component, that is whoever is using this directive that will receive this emitted value. So emit of event, whatever the event I'm having, I'm just passing to that. And now what I can do is this event should not be performed directly on this, so I can use this event emitter on that particular directive. So for that sake, let me use one more directive. Here I am trying to use multiple directives. Before going to multiple directive, let me create a paragraph, and this is click event. So this will be having only the click event, and if I want to use that click event, go to the app.component.ts and import that particular directive. What is my directive? Click event directive, and save this. Now I have the click event directive, and I can use that event here by using event emitter, and I can capture that particular event in my app.component.ts. So that is nothing but action emitted event, and I'll pass this $event. And let me copy this and go to my app.component.ts and just write this action emitter, which will be taking some data. So let me use an event which is of :any, and let me write console.log of event. So I have passed an event to this. Now let me check the console. It worked as expected and no errors. Let me go to the browser, and when the user clicks on this, the click event is not working. Let's check that why it's not working, because this paragraph does not have that directive. Let me go here and copy the directive name and just paste here for this paragraph and save this. Now the paragraph is having one of the directive, that is nothing but click directive. Let me click on this. You can see here we got a pointer event. Why? Because we are performing a click event on it. And if you see here, we got a click event over the directive as well. If you go to the directive, we wrote one console. Let me remove that. And now we are able to pass the data from our directive into our component by using @output decorator. This is how we can pass the data from our directive into our component. Now instead of using a separate stuff, I want to merge this into one particular paragraph. So there are two directives and there are two particular things which is happening. One is a color property and a click emitter event. Click event emitter is coming from app click event, and this color property is coming from app color. So we are using two different directives on a particular element. Let me hit enter for this, and let me hit enter here so that you will get a clear understanding. I am using a app color and I am using a app event, and I am passing the color property and I am passing the click event emitter. These are the different types of properties we are passing and the emitters we are passing over a particular directives. So now here we have two directives, we can manage something like this. But for example, if you have a list of directives, example, now in this case I want to combine this color as well as event into one particular directive. Along with that, it should have some other feature over it. So if I want to make such directives, that means combination of one directive, merging two directives into one directive, that can be possible by using our directive composition. That we'll try today. Now what I will do is, instead of using these two on a particular element, I'll merge this into one particular merger directive. So let me go and create our merger directive. Ng generate d for directive, and merger is the directive name, and let me skip this, skip tests and standalone. So I am creating a standalone directive, and here this is very important. You need to create a standalone directive itself, otherwise you cannot use any merger directives. But the previous directives, whatever you have created, that can be a modular level or at a component level, which we are trying to use. But whenever you want to create a composition directive, then you have to create it as a standalone component. Let me go into the standalone component, and now what I'll do is I'll try to import the required ones. So instead of importing this, I can use something like host directives, and this directives will have the capability to merge whatever the directives you want. In this case, I want to merge this directive, that is click event directive. So let me pass that click event directive, import it, and comma, let me go into one more directive, that is color directive. So here let me copy this color directive name and go here and paste here, just use this color directive. So now what we are doing, we are merging these two directives into merger directive without any other features. So this will have only two features, one is click event as well as color directive. How to use this? Let me copy this and go to your app.component.ts, and inside this ts let me remove the remaining stuff. I don't want to use this two directive because already they are merged in our merger directive. And how can I use them in the UI? Just remove these two directives, and then let me go to our merger directive and copy this app merger and go here, paste here, save this. So now this app merger will have two directives. Let me go here. It is showing some error, can't bind to the color since it is not known property of a particular app merger. So if you see our app merger, it doesn't have any input decorator and any events over it. So how to pass this? So do we need to create here the input decorators? No, it is always no. Why? Because that input decorators are related to this particular color directive and the output decorator is related to the click event directive. In such cases, whenever you want to utilize that input decorator and the output decorators, then it is our responsibility to change our code in such a way like an objects, array of objects, which will accept a directive, and that directive will be equivalent to this particular click event directive, and it has one more property called as outputs, and you can pass whatever the outputs we want to expose from our directive. If you go into this directive, you have something called as click emitter. I want to expose this directive as an output decorator. Let me paste here, and now this is one more directive. So let me create an object and let me pass the directive, and the directive name is color directive, and this has one more thing called as input decorators. So we have only input decorators for this, and whatever the input decorators we want to expose, let me copy that color and pass it as a string inside this input decorator. Now these two directives are allowing two things, one is output decorators and one is input decorators, and this will be merged together into our merger directive, and this merger directive will have the capability to receive the color property and to emit the click emitter. So let me go here, and now everything is working fine. Clear it off and let me click here. You can see that particular app.component.ts is receiving our event. So now this is about your merging of the directive composition, and also there is one more advantage for using this merger directive. So these two already merged into this directive, and this particular directive can also have some extra features. For example, what I want to do is whenever we are trying to resize this, okay, resize this, and if I reach the width of 300 pixel or if I reach the width of 400 pixel, then what I want to do, I just want to make a note, or the text has to be changed to something like you don't have the access for the tablet or this particular width size. So instead of showing this content, I want to show the screen is not supported. So for that sake, I'll use one more listener called as host listener, and here inside this host listeners I will go with window colon resize. So this will give an event for us, that is nothing but dollar event, and that event I can capture on resize method. So let me go into on resize method. This method you can write anything and just receive an event for this, and inside this what I will do is just I'll use colon any, and if you see here, let me write a console.log of event dot target dot inner width. I just want to check the inner width. Let me save this and go here, clear it off. You can see 190 is the inner width. Let me make it big, and you can see 373. And whenever it reaches 300, I don't want to show this message. Instead, I want to show a normal message. Whatever the message we want, we can show it off. So how can I use it? Now the case is, I just want to create a private variable which is having an element ref and element ref. So now I'm passing this element ref. Copy this and go here. This dot element ref dot native element dot inner HTML is equal to, I will show screen not supported. Now the screen is not supported, but by default it will show screen is not supported. If you go here, screen is not supported. Why? Because we are not writing any condition. Now what I'll do is I'll write the condition event dot target dot inner width. If it is less than or equal to 300 pixel, then I should show this one. If not, that should be remain same. That means in else condition, what I can do is I'll receive some data for this at the rate input decorator, and that decorator should contain a inner message which should be a colon string, and it should not have any data, and this data I'll try to pass from my component. So let me go into component.html. So this is from app color, this is from click event directive, and this is from our merger directive. Let me pass some message here, and the message is, let me not use the property binding because we are not getting the dynamic data. Instead of that, let me cut this and pass it as a text. And now let me use this inner message here, save this and go to your merger. Whenever you get a greater than 300, then my element should have a inner HTML with this particular value, that is inner message value. Let me save this, and now let me go back. If you see here, by default we are having Angular 15. Now let me resize a bit large, so 383, so it is working fine. And let me go less, and if it reaches something like 300, if you see here, we reach 306, 302, 301 and 300. Once it reaches 300 resize, then it is saying that screen is not supported. And if you start increasing it, you can see here again Angular version 15 directive composition message has been shown. And let me resize to less than 300, then again it is showing screen not supported. This is how you can merge all the different types of directives into one directive, and you can add some features for that particular directive, and all this can be used on a particular element like this. So in this way we can use only one particular directive, and you can merge them together to create one particular directive. And even you can only combine click event and color event together, or you can just combine your resize event with the click event as one directive. Like that you can use an independent directive, as well as you can combine with any other directive. So that is the advantage of using directive composition. Wherever we want, we can merge it. That is the whole strategy of using composition directive. So let me summarize this. What is composition directive, when and where we can use? Composition directive can be used only on the standalone components, and whenever you want to use this composite directive, then always create the directive as a standalone directive, and you can inject any other directives into it. And if you want to expose your output decorator and input decorator values, then you have to use outputs and inputs in an object structure. Instead of using directive directly, we have an object which have a directive and a directive name, inputs and outputs properties. So whatever you are exposing inside this particular array, that particular properties or the emitters can be used by your particular element. So that is how you can use your composite directive. So 2 points to remember: it should be a standalone component where you are trying to use this, and the second thing is, whenever you want to create a merger or merging of two directives, that directive should be a standalone directive, and it is only possible on the standalone directives. And also one point to remember is, this merger type of directives can be used only after Angular 14. That means from Angular 15 we have this feature. Before that we don't have this type of feature. So please make sure to use these bullet points whenever you are trying to use this composite directive. Hope you like my explanation. If you like my video, like, share, subscribe to my channel for more updates. Signing off. Thank you.